Well, if you're wondering what this little thing up here is, I thought it was a book. This is a clock. I guess they want me to I'd take it off, but they'll probably get mad at it. I brought my own little clock, and which is probably a good thing because I am an Al-Anon and on and on and on. I'm knocked out by how many people are here on a Friday morning. Thank you for coming. The committee told me not to do a regular talk, so I had to write a few things down. I am a slowly recovering Al-Anon. My name is Rick Chatuk. Good morning to you all. And on this beautiful December the 13th day here in Las Vegas, Nevada, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to bear witness to you that by the grace of God and the power of a program called the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which we practice ourselves, commitment to and active membership in a fellowship called the Al-Anon Family Groups, and the very loving, very clear guidance of a black belt Al-Anon sponsor. It has not been necessary for me to plan any kind of death, yours or mine, since the 10th day of April, 1987, and for that I am most certainly grateful. Clap to that. Yeah, get some clapping going on. So there's a screen here, a screen there, a screen there, and there's one back there. So hey, I can look at myself. Hey, how you doing? Lost 40 pounds. I'm looking pretty good, don't you think? Cut my hair, what I have left. Feeling all right. And so my home group is the Oakville Saturday Morning Al-Anon Family Group. My hometown is Oakville, Ontario, Canada. Oakville is about a 40-minute drive, depending on traffic, from the downtown core of Toronto. Fantastic, beautiful city. If you've never been there, please come and join us. We have a little party like this in March. Love to have some of you here. I'm sure many of you have been there already. So it's just lovely to be here. I'm not quite sure why I'm here. I'm not alcoholic. At this Stateline event for Alcoholics Anonymous, but I got the invite, and they say if you get a legitimate request, say yes. So I said yes, and this was a pretty cool request. I reread this morning the instructions I received as someone invited to share at the Stateline retreat, and it was very, very clear. Do not thank any individual by name. I mean, it's crystal clear. I can pull up and read it to you. And so I won't do that, but I will thank the committee for inviting me, and I can tell you that I met the committee at a conference in Banff. And I was speaking there with a member of the committee, I guess the committee, and And it was dinner time, and my host had vanished. I don't know where my host was, and so I showed up for dinner, and it was a beautiful location. If you've never been to Banff, Banff's kind of up in Western Canada, you know. It's this beautiful town in the mountains, and it was snowing, and it was in early March, and looking out. I mean, it was like idyllic, like picture a postcard. And so I walk in, and I'm alone for dinner, and there's the committee having dinner with two other people. And he said, "Hey, Rick, come on over. Are you alone?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, come on over and join us." Now, that's a pretty rare thing that the alcoholic comes over invites the Alanon to join in. We're real good at doing that. Alcoholic, come on over. But the alcoholic's not so much so. It's kind of like, ah! And so the committee, so we're having a nice chat, the committee and I. As I hadn't seen him for a while. I've been at a few conferences with the committee a few times, actually, and really, really enjoy the committee's talk. And so, so in the middle of the dinner, the committee asked me, he said, "Would you like to come and speak at Stateline?" I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, it's like this AA gathering you do in Las Vegas." And I said, "When is it?" He said, "March." So I'm thinking, I live in Canada, March. We were there in March. He said, it's a conference. It's in Las Vegas. It's in December. And I said, so I live in Canada, and Las Vegas in December, I'm coming. And so when I left home yesterday, it was -7 degrees Celsius. When I landed, that's another thermometer scale. That's the real one. Anyhow, I won't tell you about that. So I land in Las Vegas, and it's 14 degrees Celsius. And I'm thinking a 21-degree change. This is pretty good. Thank you, committee, for inviting me to Las Vegas. And so anyhow, he said to me in this invite, he said, you really don't do your talk. He said, it's kind of a thing where you focus in and you pick a topic and you kind of do a workshop. And I said, well, that sounds really quite interesting, actually. And so I certainly enjoyed the talks that we heard last night. And didn't you love it when Ralph said that resentments were gone with his dad? But when he phoned his dad, he realized there was more there. And I identified with that so much, because what's there is what I felt with my father when the amends had been made, when the resentments were gone. And it's that return to basic humanness where we love our parents. And to be able to unmask that human desire to connect with our folks and to grow from there. What a beautiful, beautiful thing that he shared. Loved it. And it was marvelous to hear Sharon again. And great to see you, Sharon. And a number of times, we don't see each other a lot, but over the years, and we get to witness one another's journeys. And isn't that what we get to do here? Tina, the same. We get to see each other, witness each other as we move along. These little times we come together. So that's a great thing. So committee, thank you very much for inviting me to this august gathering. And I'd like to thank my host, Patrick. This is the first time he's hosted, so give him a hand. Be gentle with him; it's his first time. You're doing a pretty good job, and but really on a much deeper level, I do want to say thank you very, very sincerely for inviting Alanon to participate in your event. To me, so today I'm the one that gets to share. Most of the time I get to listen. But today I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share. But what I'm really happy about, and what really kind of honored, is that AA invites Al-Anon to participate in their events. Because what it says to me, there's an acknowledgement that alcoholism is a family disease also. I heard a guy say it like this one time. He said, alcoholism is not a spectator sport. It's a good way to say it. Nobody kind of goes through this unscathed. And isn't it an amazing thing that us, the family members, the non-alcoholics, the people that do not have the phenomenon of craving, have the exact same steps. One word changed in the bottom. Exact. As a member of Al-Anon, someone who can have a drink and just be quite happy. I know now you hate me as soon as I can say that. But someone who can just have a drink and be perfectly satisfied with that, or even be satisfied not even to have one, comes into a program that says, Rick, you need to admit that you too are powerless over alcohol. How do we do that when you don't drink? It's one of the challenges. And so in thinking about what I wanted to share about here, I just want to say this one last thing. It just kind of came to my mind when I was meditating this morning. And for some reason, I remembered Bruce Springsteen when he won the Academy Award for writing the song Streets of Philadelphia. Best original song. Musician gets up to accept an award from all these actors, gives this magnificent thank you speech. And when he finishes, he says, thanks for inviting me to your party. I say the same to you. Thank you for inviting me to your party. This is a family reunion, and I'm happy to be part of the extended family. Beautiful. I would like to, so the topic that I have given myself, I called the committee and talked to them about it, and I talked to Lee about that, and this is to give it a topic, because it just says Al-Anon in the program, I want to say the family disease. And what that fundamentally is for me has been my journey through step one as a member of Al-Anon. Is someone who does not have alcohol, who can drink, but does not have that phenomenon of craving. But before I do that, I just kind of want to get a little current with you. Because after I got that invitation in March, it was a beautiful weekend, and come back and we're open. And I think that what we become open to, at least what I've become open to, is hearing a message from wherever the message can come. And so I was out to breakfast just a few days after I had been at that gathering in Banff with some friends of mine. I'm retired now. I recommend it strongly. 4.5 years, and it's getting better every day. Fantastic. I love my job, but I love not working. And so retired people go to breakfast. You don't meet for lunch, you don't meet for dinner, you go out to breakfast. And so we're chatting about a mutual friend, and a friend says to me, our friend Barry is getting sick of going in for radiation. I said, what's he going in for radiation for? He said, well, he has prostate cancer. I said, really? Listen for the messages. Be open for the message. I thought to myself, and this was a good thought, not some of those crazy ones. This was a good one. I have a doctor's appointment in a couple of days. I get asked for one of those tests. Haven't had one in memory. So I asked my doctor. I said, hey, give me one of those PSA tests. She said, why? Well, I have this friend who's diagnosed. Give me one, He said, well, it costs $30. He said, I'll pay the $30. So I go get the test. And then a few days later, I don't know if it's like this in the United States, but the doctor never kind of calls you to say, hey, congratulations, your results are good. Does that happen here? Sure doesn't happen in Canada. Called me back, went through this whole process, found out that I had the absolute worst kind you could have. Super aggressive, super lethal, actually. And only reason I found out about it was I listened, as my sponsor calls it, the God nudge. We can get a message from anywhere. So I went through the problem with Bori with that whole process. I had it taken out, and the protocol was every 90 days I go back and they read my results and get a little nervous before each time. And the last time was just 3 weeks ago, and he said, hey, congratulations. He said, your results are still undetectable. He said, I don't have to see you for 6 months. And I went, yes! Absolutely fantastic. And so we talked, yeah, thank you, applaud for that. Pretty amazing. But you see, I had a disease. I had prostate cancer, the most virulent kind. And there was no question about that I had to do something about it. None. Isn't it fascinating to think that alcoholism, the family disease, is exactly the same thing? Something I have, not something I've just been affected by. And that's the slipperiest thing about Al-Anon, is that we don't get here because there's anything wrong with us. We get here because of you. The whole program states out, our third tradition says the only qualification for membership is that there be a problem of alcoholism in a relative or friend. Not me. That to be out there, our public information material says, is someone drinking bothering you? Is alcohol a problem in your home? And we immediately go to, yes, the alcoholic is a problem in our home. But the journey for me, from keeping a square focus on you to having the God just kind of turning my whole hand around and pointing it at me, is the only thing that has saved my life. And in a nutshell, it goes from this. There really isn't any problem. Drinking's fun in the beginning. Even when you're in Al-Anon, it's kind of you're having fun together. But then it kind of starts to get a little worse, and you start to think, well, yeah, that alcoholic really is a problem. And we focus on that for a long time. And that is embedded, at least it's embedded in my DNA, that the alcoholic is the problem. Even though my mouth will say, rah, 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 rah. It's kind of like the adults from Charlie Brown. You always go, wah, 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 wah. I could mouth things, but deep down, I always thought that you were the problem. Even when I've been Al-Anon for a long time. And then you get here and they say, you have to admit that you're powerless over alcohol. Holy God, that's a long way away from this thing being fun. And it's a long way away from you being the problem. Then you run into that silly little hyphen in there. What's that about? And you kind of cross over from everything, all that focus on you to, my life's unmanageable? Yeah, my life is unmanageable because of you. And you kind of start to see maybe some of the things that I do. But still deep down inside, it's like, it's really about you. Still, I want to belong. I want to fit in, so I'll kind of admit or say a few things. But deep down, it's really about you. And then there's that blessed time. If one is really, truly willing, and if you have found a sponsor like I was blessed to find, who will not accept you living in denial. If you find a sponsor like mine who would rather see you live than die, who will not co-sign your BS, you will reach a point that I blessedly reached, where I realized that just like the cancer, the family disease of alcoholism is something I have. And when I have it, I then need to do those 12 steps. And the sad thing about this is if I never get to the point where it's something I have, I never need to do the steps. And I will never have an awakening. If I remain focused on you, I am doomed. And that's the thing for the Al-Anon. In Toronto, Murray knows this, we do this thing in AA and in Al-Anon. We always the chairperson does this qualification thing at the beginning of the meeting. And so, because we have the tradition that says the only qualification for membership and, the only qualification for here is your desire to stop drinking. And so we qualify at the beginning. And I think that's a really good thing to do because, as we all know, anybody can join AA. But you got to know someone to get into Al-Anon. And so I've known 5 of them. I'm a collector. And, two by birth, kind of a father and then a grandmother. But really more germane to my disease, more germane to the family disease is that I've chosen 3. And of those 3, I've got 2 of them in Al-Anon. Isn't that an amazing thing? So, this is a pretty big group. I'm amazed, actually, how big the group is. And so, I taught school for 36 years. That's what I retired from. And so it's really a very natural thing for me to stand in front of a group of people and ask a few questions. So please play along with me. So how many people here are in Al-Anon? Anybody? Okay, we got a few. Thanks very much. AA's applaud for the Al-Anons. You're that's right. Yeah, good. How many people here are in Alcoholics Anonymous? Yeah, just a few. Is there? Al-Anons, look around. Your future ex-husband is somewhere in the room here. And now, of the Al-Anons, and maybe even some of the alcoholics, let's kind of start to take a look at this family disease thing. How many have chosen, like I have, one alcoholic? Put up your hand, real question. Okay, a fair number of you. That's quite common when you come to these gatherings. And so I'm here to say that, that may have been a mistake. Let's just kind of I'll give you that. May have been a mistake. How many have chosen 2? Okay, so yeah, the mistake is kind of going away now. This is we're leaving mistake territory, and we're getting into purposeful behavior now. How many have chosen 3? Right, there you go. See, there you go. Absolutely. So mistakes are gone. That is choice. But of course, the problem is the alcoholic. It's all about you. How many have done this? This is always amazing to me. How many have been with one, either married them or lived with them for long term, separated or divorced, and married or moved back in with them again? Anybody? There you go. You're my people. Absolutely. There is help for you. The world is a safer place, actually, now that you're here. And now here, this is the granddaddy of all. How many people, knowing all of that, have gone to AA looking for one? There you go. Absolutely. That old gag we have, if you're coming here looking for a partner, the odds are very good and the goods are very odd. Oldest line we got, and it's still true. So if you're here today in Al-Anon, like I am, and you hear these really fantastic sharings by AA members, and you start to identify, you think, man, maybe I'm alcoholic. Because I listen to them too, and I identify, I think, maybe I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink, but maybe I'm an alcoholic. Ignore and you're going to talk to an alcoholic about that, ignore that. Ignore any of the literature they're going to give you. At the end of the meeting, just come up to me and say, do you find me attractive? And if the answer is yes, you run like heck to the other side. If I think you're cute, you're a drunk. It's just really that simple. And Mari's beautiful. That's all I can tell you. So Mari and I live in the same city, and I have to fly 3 time zones to see her. We just hardly ever get along. So anyway, what's the deal with Al-Anon? Have you ever thought that in AA? What's the deal? Why do they have to go? What's wrong with them? They're just hanging on. They're like Klingons, little Al-Anons. What are they doing here? This is our thing. I'm the one that was sending my life down the toilet drinking alcohol. They were just nagging me all the time. If you stop nagging me, I'll be good. Heard a guy tell a great joke. The alcoholic husband of a super nagging wife finally comes home and says, "Finally, I've had enough of your nagging. I'm leaving." And the nagging wife says, "Oh, good, I'll come with you." Family disease right there, I'll tell you that. So about years ago, this slippery thing. Now, I'm in Alanon, and I still sometimes wonder what the deal is. Why am I here? So years ago, I was I'm telling you about this conference, the Ontario Regional Conference. When I came back to Alanon, I started in Alanon, like when I was 11 years old, if you can believe that. I was in Alanon until they kicked me out. You can't be bald and have a beard and stay in Alanon. You got to get out of here. And, I went to Al-Anon for a while. Then I left, met the first of the three alcoholics. She was more exciting than any of you. I came back. And so I was invited to participate as an Al-Anon chairperson, co-chair, for the Al-Anon portion of this conference, the RC, where you're going to be, Tina. And so I misread the thing and got there half an hour early to the meeting. So I'm alone in the room. And in comes another member of the committee in AA, and there's the two of us sitting there. And she says, "So what's your name?" "My name's Rick." And she says, "Well, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of the Al-Anon co-chair." And she kind of looked funny at me. I don't fit the Al-Anon profile, especially back then in the late 80s. I don't have blue hair. I don't hardly have any hair. And I'm a guy, and she just didn't get it. So she said this to me: "Why are you in Al-Anon?" That's a very good question. And I ask that to all of my Al-Anon colleagues here. Why are you in Al-Anon? And I found myself telling her about every alcoholic in my life and not mentioning a word about me. And as I'm walking away from that, was when it was at the Harbor Castle, walking up to get to the subway, I thought, it's like a little message that came to me: "Rick, there's more to it than that." A few years later, I was invited to share at this conference a couple hours away from Toronto, called London, Ontario, and I was on a panel, and a guy who was sponsoring me at the time was there, and so I shared. And afterwards, everybody comes up to thank you, and then I'm waiting. Here's Bob, not the committee Bob, the Bob who was sponsoring me, because I want to hear what he has to say. And so he said, "Well, that was a pretty good talk." He said, "You're kind of funny, and you kind of kept it on time." And he said, "And you told some really good stories." He said, "It's just too bad none of them were yours." No! To the solar plexus. I've never forgotten it. How many of us have listened to an Al-Anon share and know more about the partner than the person sharing? That, my dear friends, is part of the Al-Anon disease. You see, I love to share about you, because when I share about you, I don't have to look at me. I can hide behind you, because the alcoholic is easy to hide behind. There's a lot going on there, pretty dramatic. And everybody sees that, and everybody thinks they know. And so you hide behind that. Saturday morning, 6 days ago, I met my home group. A guy, a sponsor, his name is Steve, had spoken the night before at an AA gratitude meeting. We do that around December time. Said, "How'd it go, Steve?" He said, "It went really well, but I had a real interesting conversation with an AA member after the meeting." The AA member says to me, he said, "I don't get it. Why you, the family member, need a program of recovery." And he said, "That was a really good question." I said, "How'd you answer it?" He said, "I didn't have a very good answer." Because it's slippery. Kind of hard to get to that. On a visceral level, we in Al-Anon know that there's something there. But what is it? A woman who chaired my meeting just on Saturday morning talked about her first coming into Al-Anon. She said she had two questions. One, should I get a divorce? And two, how do I get him sober? Because that's the focus. That's why we come. That's how we get here. But the miracle of getting here happens to us in whatever way it happens. I have a friend that works in a treatment center. And so I was chatting with him one day, and I was saying, well, what do you do for the family members? And he said, well, we do an admission for an alcoholic. And he said, the family is the hardest thing to deal with. He said, we had this one person come in, dropped off her husband, and we said, meaning the treatment center, said, we have a program for you, the family member. She said, me? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm going to Cuba. You look after this guy for 2 weeks. I'm going to have a good time. It's a long way from I'm going to Cuba to admitted we're powerless over alcohol. That is a long journey to get us there. And so we always say, Al-Anon should be 10 times bigger than AA, because for every alcoholic, there's 10 people. In actual fact, Al-Anon is 10% of the size of AA, instead of 10 times bigger than AA. So to get the family member in here, God knows what that is. So we just keep on trying. But the miracle did happen for me. It happened when I was 11 years old. And I left and I came back and started to do this thing. I did it, I finally got a sponsor. Did it sponsorless for a long time, which means I wasn't doing it. I was here, but I wasn't doing it. Finally got this sponsor who kicked my butt from here to Timbuktu and back and saved my life. And she really got me to start to work these steps and I really started to take a look at who I am and what is this family disease thing. And so she said, Rick, we got to admit we're powerless over alcohol. And I said, I don't drink. How do I do that? And I have this friend, many of you know her name is Mildred. And her and I, we used to go to, for many years, we'd go to hear the Toronto Symphony together, 4, 5, 6 times a year. And in one of these years, we find ourselves at the opening night of the symphony. And afterwards, it was kind of a swishy affair out in the lobby. They're walking around with little canapes and strawberries dipped in chocolate, and somebody's walking around with a tray of little glasses of water and little glasses of champagne. So after the concert, I'm there with my friend Dave Mildred in AA. We have a strawberry, we have a little thing to eat, and she picks up a little glass of water. I pick up a little glass of water. She said, why don't you have the champagne? And I said, well, I got to go to work in the morning. She said, what does that have to do with anything? And there's one of the fundamental differences. It's so true. She came over one Christmas time, and one of our traditions was we had a little bit of champagne with orange juice. So, we'd buy a whole bottle of champagne, we'd put a little bit in the orange juice, and we'd sip it while we were opening the presents, and then we didn't want any more. So just as Mildred walked into my kitchen, there's my sister dumping out the rest of the champagne. Mildred went into cardiac arrest. I had to get her fibrillator. She said, Rick, that is alcohol abuse. And so I'm one of those guys who can just drink that you titter about at your meetings. You know those guys, what you talk about when you're talking amongst yourselves? I hear you. Because I get invited to these things. And you don't know me, so I'm just sitting down, but I'm an Al-Anon, so I listen to you. And I hear you giggle. I was out to dinner. I watched this person have a glass of wine. They nursed it all night. Dinner was over. They left, and there was still wine in the glass. And I'm going, so? You guys are going thinking it's crazy. I'm that guy. So when I'm that guy, how do I admit I'm powerless over alcohol? Because this substance doesn't do it for me. I'd rather have a glass of milk than a beer. But alcohol in my home has always been there. From the earliest recollection, every time I've said this so many times, every time I've looked at the end of my arm, there's been a hand, and every time I've looked at the end of my leg, there's been a foot. And alcoholism in my family has been like that. And never a time somebody said, hey, Rick, this is alcoholism. I've just kind of always known that. And it progressed. It was kind of fun in the beginning when I was a kid. We'd have great parties. But as things went on, I heard a guy say it in the most succinct way. You've probably heard him say it too. Alcoholism has 3 stages. Fun with problems. I heard somebody say that, and I remember that, and that is true for this Al-Anon. So we're in this. And I developed becoming a very nervous kid, very anxious. I was peeing all the time. I was hiding all the time. Things were going on. And the deal in my home was I was the oldest one. And so it's really, there's a lot of tension. And the tension in the home is not so much when the alcoholism is full blown, kind of when the battle's going on, when the drunkenness is happening. It's in between, when there's nothing going on. And there's that complete inability to relax, to have any sense of serenity or peace or trust, because the sense is, when's it coming? And as a matter of fact, the quiet is almost worse than the drinking. And I had absolutely no control over that. I wasn't doing that to myself. That just happened in the middle of alcoholism. And I'd hide in this closet all the time, and I would paste up a sign saying "keep out" and I want people to come in. And I just did these crazy. I was always looking for ways to protect myself, and I just started to display some really weird things. And we would, my dad was alcoholic, and he drank a lot. But there were times when he didn't drink, and I couldn't reconcile that. Who is this guy today that was tearing the house apart last night? Who's this guy this weekend that we called the police on in the middle of the week? Who's this guy here now that hasn't been home for 3 days, wanting to be dad again? I just couldn't reconcile that. And I was powerless. And I'm so glad to know today that he was not doing that to us. Alcoholism was at play. There was no purposefulness in that. Alcoholism comes into a home and it wreaks havoc on everybody in there. It is not a spectator sport. And we would get these plans to go to a cottage, summer home, and we didn't own a cottage, but he had a friend who had a cottage, and it was in Bobcaygeon. And the plan was, hey, Rick, we'll get together, we'll go to the cottage, and we'll do some fishing, and we'll do some swimming, and we'll go in the boat, and we'll do that stuff together, Rick. And Dad, I want to do that. And this is a very natural thing. And so we get there, and the stop before the cottage was at the liquor store. And this is so long ago. Do you remember bench seats in the front of a car? I'm sitting in the passenger seat. Dad stops at the liquor store. Out he goes. Back he comes. And on the seat between his son and him goes the bottle. And at that moment, I was powerless over alcohol. That the son would go fishing alone. Hey, Dad, look what I caught. Yeah, that's great. Dad would sit in the dock drinking the whiskey. Canadian Club. Go out in the boat. Hey, Dad, I'm out in the boat. Yeah, son, you just got to look after yourself. I'm here. Go swimming. Hey, Dad, I'm out swimming. Yeah, it's okay, son. And the sad thing about that is that the father wanted to be fishing. He wanted to be in the boat. He wanted to be with his son. But he was powerless over alcohol. What it did to him, and the son was powerless over alcohol too. And there is nobody bad in that equation. It's disease. But that's the reality of it. My dad loved to do a few things, told the story a lot of times, that it really helps exemplify who we are in the middle of alcoholism. And he loved to drink, he loved to garden, and he loved to take off his clothes. I think it's why I like female alcoholics so much. Hi, how you doing? Whoosh! Hey, this is fantastic. Let's go. So Dad would start drinking in the morning, and he'd start doing the gardening in the backyard, and he'd drink, he'd garden, he'd drink, he'd garden, and he'd work his way to the front. So by mid-afternoon, he was right out front, kind of a trail of clothes from the backyard right out the front, and I don't know how many beers he had had. And this was in the days, do you remember when you used to put suntan oil on to attract the sun instead of lotion to repel the sun? Remember that? And so he's out there. We all know the physique of the beer drinker. Oh, beautiful. And so there he is right out front. Right out front of the house. You'd think, if knowing what he did, he'd start gardening in the front and go to the back, but au contraire, the keen alcoholic mind will start in the back and will work out to the front. And so there he is by mid-afternoon, and not fully naked, but if you get the image, like of the magnificent beer physique, oiled up, to attract the sun, Bermuda shorts turned into a thong, and sandals. And you can see my mother looking through the front window. You get in here now, you hunk. I want you right here on the floor. And so we're embarrassed. We're embarrassed. And we had a guy in the street that would race cars and motorcycles and stuff up the road. And my dad really disliked it. And so they went after the guy. And the guy stopped one time. And they had this to-do in the middle of the street. And there we are. Inside, embarrassed. He's doing it. We're embarrassed. He's making a shame of himself. We're ashamed. He's showing the world his butt. We can't show our face. And is that not a classic symptom of the family disease called alcoholism? You do it. I feel it. I think I caused it. I didn't cause it, but I thought that I did. You know, in my family, I told you about all these alcoholics. There's a whole supporting cast, and I want to say this just really quite honestly and clearly that in my family, 5 people, 5 died is a direct result of drinking alcohol. 5 of them. An uncle, an aunt, a cousin was found on the side of the road. They identified her through her dental records. Another uncle who was discovered after the neighbors at his apartment complained about an odor. It's ugly. And my grandmother, cirrhosis of the liver, 63 years old, spent the last 10 years of her life drinking 2 bottles of wine, smoking cigarettes, and eating grilled cheese sandwiches. That's the thing that I came from. But I don't drink alcohol, but I'm powerless over alcohol. I was powerless over what alcohol did to the people that I loved. I was powerless to stop them from drinking it. And I was powerless over what it did to me. And that is a magnificent thing. When I was a kid, I told you I went to Alanon, and they said to me some great stuff. They said, Rick, you know, your father's not a bad man. He's an alcoholic, but he's not a bad man. He's a disease. He's not a disgrace. What a beautiful thing to hear. What a beautiful, because what we meaning the Al-Anons, what we did in my family, is our deal was my mother was terrified of what was going on. And so she needed to have someone to talk to. So I was the guy. So at 5 years old, I was her protector. At 7 years old, I was her sexual counselor. At age 9, I was kind of the man of the house. That's just the way that the family disease goes. And nobody's doing that to anybody, but that's what went on. And I'm not a victim of that. I'm not blaming anybody on that. I own exactly who I am in all of that. And the funny thing is that when all the alcoholics are gone and when all the alcoholism is over, I've still got what I've got, regardless of the state of the people who are the alcoholic. So this Alanon thing was great, and I love the fellowship. Don't we love the fellowship? Love it. I loved it so much that I just ignored a program. I felt some relief, felt that the relief was the recovery, and cruised on relief for way too long. And what happens when one is cruising on relief, like I was cruising on relief, is that the family disease is a progressive disease. Alcoholism is a progressive disease. Alcoholism, the family disease, is a progressive disease. And so I'm denying that there's anything there. I'm cruising on relief, but the disease is still going on. So my need to be needed by other people, my sense of being a victim, and I so identified with that victim cloak thing. I kind of wore it like a banner, this whole victim thing. Everything that was wrong with me was about you, was continuing to get worse. Being a martyr is just a victim with a mission. I'll show you I'll do more than anything humanly possible, just so controlling everything and everybody around me is getting worse. But I'm in the rooms. And I think I'm getting better. And I'm dying. And I'm in the rooms. I'm driving my car, somebody steps off the sidewalk. I point my car at them. I'll get ya! This white hot rage would come out in the craziest, strangest places. Absolutely, totally filled with fear. We say I'm a people pleaser. I'm not a people pleaser. All I want is your approval. And I'll do anything to get it. I'm an approval sucker. I'm in the rooms. I'm in denial. I'm thinking, I'm here. I'm the GR. This step doesn't say having had a spiritual awakening as a result of being the GR. I read that. I thought it would. It doesn't say having had a spiritual awakening as a result of putting out the chairs. Well, do the chairs. But that's not the spiritual awakening. But you see, if there's nothing wrong with me, I don't need to do the steps to have the spiritual awakening. I just needed some relief, I thought. So I left, chose those 3 alcoholic women. She left me, I came back, tail between my legs, got this sponsor, and things started to get real. So we admitted we're powerless over alcohol. Our public information poster says we're affected by alcoholism. That's kind of the next level. I'm affected by it. But I needed to go so far below being affected by this thing. I stopped there, sadly. I'm affected by it. I can give the word because I'm an approval sucker, right? I'd say the things I want you to say so I feel like I fit in. I heard a guy say, he might be here. Remy, are you here this morning? He's not here. I met this guy in Wichita a couple of months ago, and I was sharing my story, and afterwards he came up to me and he said, there's a thing I don't understand about Al-Anon. He said, if I had lived with somebody like me, I would have kicked my butt out. And he said, I don't understand why you didn't do that. And I said, that's a pretty fascinating thing. Why is that? You ever read Bill, you've seen Bill, we all know Bill's story. I'm sure we're going to get a great history talk after this. You ever seen those pictures of him, the motorcycle that he and Lois rode around in? Isn't that an amazing thing? It was like a bicycle with a motorcycle engine. I mean with a lawnmower engine, and this little sidecar, and she's sleeping in a canvas tent in a field somewhere, and she's staying with him. Staying with him. Through it all. He's drunk like crazy. She's working in a department store. She's staying with him. He has that white-light experience. He meets Bob. They get sober. She has her thing. Damn those old meetings. She throws a shoe. That's the weeniest thing I wish I didn't belong to a fellowship that started with throwing a shoe. Your story is way better than ours. Why are you here? Lois threw a shoe. What? But she went through all of that other stuff. And it was when the alcoholic got sober that she started to see hers. And isn't it an amazing thing how many marriages break up after sobriety? Why is that? Because it's an answer to Remy's question. Because the alcoholism and the needing somebody to fix is our cocktail. It's no surprise that we pick one, that I picked 2, that I picked 3. I'm not picking bad people. I'm picking sickness. It's sickness calling sickness. It's not bad calling bad. That's what that was. I didn't admit any of that stuff. Our answer is we're going to control it. I want you to stop drinking and I'll be okay. We talk about the selfishness of the alcoholic. Look at the selfishness of the Alanon. You're suffering from a fatal terminal disease if you don't stop drinking, and I want you to stop drinking so I'll be better. Not you. That's my focus. I want you to do it. So we try to control it, and you know how good that works. I had this friend who used to, when he was a teenager, he moved into an apartment with some other friends, and a friend of his wanted to have a waterbed. Remember waterbeds? Remember those? Well, his friend couldn't afford the bed, but he could only afford the mattress, which is a bag. So he bought the bag, and he put it on the floor, and he filled it up with water, and he said, here's my water bed. I said, no, Joe, that's a water bag. So he slept on this water bag, and he was kind of a messy guy, and he had a cat. And so the cat knocked over a glass. They didn't clean up the glass. The glass migrated underneath the water bag, started to leak. They were on the 18th floor of an apartment building. Parquet floor, you know the deal. So they said, we got to fix this. So these guys, they're telling me they're wrestling this water bag down the hall in the apartment. And finally, they just get a little bit of the bag over the tub. And they say, well, that's going to work. And they open up the thing, and it's just dribbling out. And they say, well, if we cut it, more water will come. We'll get it. So that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea, committee. That's a good idea. So they get a knife, and the little bit of the bag of water hanging over the bathtub, they cut it. And it splits wide open all over the apartment and down into the apartments below. And that's exactly what it's like trying to control an alcoholic. But we will go to the gates of insanity doing that, believing that if I can control you, I'll be just fine. That, my dear friends, is the family disease of alcoholism. And again, it's totally externally focused. And we get our support in enabling. I remember when I met that first alcoholic, her mother said to me one time, years in, she said, "She is so much better now that she's with you." Oh, beautiful. See my halo? I'll just polish that a little bit. Rick, she was really going the wrong way, but when she met you, thank you so very, very much. Think about those halos. If we burnish them, they're just going to come around and choke us. Family disease, alcoholism. They're going crazy. I like the crazy. I wanted the crazy. Met her, we did all these things. A couple of weeks into that relationship, I call it a relationship. Mildred called it a parasitic entanglement. 2 ticks without a dog, as I heard another guy say at one time. That's what we get into when we meet people. At least that's where I was. And then she said, she'd been seeing a therapist. She said, "I don't need to see a therapist anymore because now I have you." And loved all that. Right? It's fabulous. I got someone I can really fix now. But also, if you're an Alanon of my type, if you have somebody like that and you're terrified of somebody leaving, you find somebody who needs you, they're not going to leave. The family disease. I'm not drinking, but I am powerless over people, places, things, life, the things that are going on in me. I have this thing, I'm not even aware I have it. And then we find ways, isn't it funny how we refer to the alcoholics in our life? They're all victim statements. My alcoholic. We do that in Al-Anon all the time. Why do we refer always to the alcoholics in our life by their disease? And they're all victim statements. My alcoholic. And again, what it does is it separates me from you because you're easy to focus on. And I say, whew, I'm safe. But the disease keeps marching on even though I'm not addressing it. I have diabetes. My wife doesn't say, "This is my diabetic." I came from an alcoholic home. Again, the focus on the person with alcoholism, not on alcoholism. I'm a co-alcoholic. Can you believe some of this stuff? A para-alcoholic. Make me sick. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I'm 62 years old. I collect a government pension. My sponsor said, "Rick, sooner or later you need to accept the fact that it's too late to have a happy childhood." But it's never too late to have a happy life. Another friend said it this way. She said, "Rick, there's only one thing you need to know about your childhood. It's over." A codependent, don't we say that? Again, putting the focus on the person, the alcoholic, not on me. And then the worst one of all. You know what it is. It starts with a Q. We hear it all the time. My qualifier. Oh! You mean I'm not sick enough to qualify for my own program? The only way I'm going to get recovery is because you're sick? Is that what you're saying to me? I'm my own qualifier. I said this one time clap for that. Good. I said that one time at a conference in Texas, and a woman come up to me and said, and this is the truth. She said, "Well, if I can't call him my qualifier, if I can't call him my alcoholic, what can I call him?" I said, "Does he have a name?" She said, "Yes, Fred." I said, "That's a really good beginning." The family disease. We color you with one color. Alcoholic. Nothing else. And it keeps me down. Not you. Fifth tradition says we understand alcoholism. How the hell do we understand it? Well, this is what our literature tells us to do. Tradition 5, our Tradition 5 says, we have one purpose, to help families of alcoholics. We do this, this, and this, and we understand and encourage the alcoholic. And what the literature says, to understand the alcoholic, we read your book. That's what it says. So I'm at a conference, and there's a pink flyer on a chair. Big book seminar with the original guys. How long ago this was? Joe and Charlie, from Arkansas. In London, Ontario. And at the bottom it says, Al-Anon welcome. I'm going. So I show up. I think I'm the only Al-Anon in the room. They walk in. They say, hey, how long you sober? I said, 5 years. I didn't want them to know I was an Al-Anon. And I'm sitting at the back, and I'm listening to this guy, Joe McHugh, from Little Rock, Arkansas. Anybody here ever have the pleasure of meeting him personally, hearing him personally? As did I, 3 or 4 times. And he's given this talk on the phenomenon of craving. Now, I'm not alcoholic. But boy, do I know alcoholics. I don't have alcoholism, but I sure have alcoholism, the family disease. And he's talking about this phenomenon of craving, and I am fascinated, riveted, as a matter of fact. And at the end of that talk, he says this. He said, and that's why when the alcoholic is in the bar all night, and they walk outside and they fall flat in their face in a puddle of water, and you come over and pick them up and ask them if they can help you. They don't say, yes, get me home. I kind of hurt myself. I'm all wet. I need to change my clothes. They don't say any of that. They say, yes, get me another drink. And for this Al-Anon, the penny dropped. Because that little guy deep down in there that would mouth the words, I have this too, yeah, it really is me, it's really not you, but deep, 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 deep down, I believed, it's you. It really isn't anything wrong with me. It's you. You were doing it to me. You were doing it at me. You could have stopped if you wanted. It's not a disease. You're weak. I did not want to let that go. I got mileage out of that. And the family disease for me, as evidenced in that, was that if I held on to that belief, I never had to look at myself. Because that is a scary proposition. God saw different, and he passed that message to me through an alcoholic. Isn't that an amazing thing? By following exactly the directions. So on the surface, we always think it's about them. But underneath, it is, and always has been about me. So I heard one person say one time, you had her here as your Alanon speaker one time, alcoholism is like rabies. Everybody's frothing at the mouth. It's not a spectator sport. When I speak to an Al-Anon crowd, share some of this, it gets very uncomfortable. And I always end this little section by saying, this, my dear friends, is the good news. This is the good news. Because when God finally allows us to get past, there's no problem, you're the problem, alcohol's the problem, to that place where they really couldn't stop, and that I was holding on to protect myself, the belief that you could. That is a blessed place. And that's the hyphen for me. That's the bridge. That's the bridge that goes from there to the unmanageability. And what does my life look like? And what is it that I do? I'm not collateral damage caused by an alcoholic. I'm primary damage caused by alcoholism, not by the alcoholic, him or herself. And then this question, listen to this. Am I who I am because of an alcoholic? Or did I choose alcoholics because of who I am? And when I get there, what we're going to hear today and tomorrow, makes so much sense for the non-alcoholic. So that guy asking my sponsee, Why do you guys need a program of recovery? That's where I am. Sponsor, I love this little saying here. It says we must stop setting ourselves on fire to warm someone else up. Isn't that a great saying? Boy, that's like Al-Anon 101 right there. And the thing is, this is peppered all throughout our literature, but we don't talk about it much because we think Al-Anon is about relationships. Don't you hear that all the time? Al-Anon is about relationships. Well, when you go to step 12, because ours is the same, just having had a spiritual awakening, it doesn't say, I got a better relationship because I did the steps. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say I got a house because I did the steps. It doesn't say I got more money because I did the steps. It says I had an awakening. Now, what my experience is, I'm very happy to share with you, is that when I had that awakening, I became better in my relationships, and my relationships got better. I didn't work on them directly. I worked on my recovery directly. But Al-Anon, it's this Al-Anon con, is there alcohol a problem in your home? Well, yes, they are. And so you bring them in and then we say, well, how you doing? And then they start talking about their alcoholic. And we say, well, you don't talk about the alcoholic here. And they say, well, what do we talk about? Well, we talk about ourselves. Well, I don't have anything to talk about. But then you read our literature and listen to some of this. Can you imagine if we put this on our public information posters? This is right out of our Al-Anon book. I mean, this is like hardcore. February 27. The alcoholic is not my problem. The problem is me. Right there in the book. Listen to this one. If we really do want peace of mind, the first thing to realize is that it does not depend on conditions outside us, but those inside us. Because the whole focus is out there. It's on you. What Al-Anon tells me is, no, Rick, the focus needs to be on the inside. Listen to this one. Many of our troubles are self-created. What? You're the problem. You stop drinking, I'll be all right. Al-Anon says, no, many of the troubles are self-created. Many of our personal agonies, self-inflicted. And then listen to this, right out of an Al-Anon book. Al-Anon's prime purpose, that's a strong statement. Al-Anon's prime purpose is to help us deal with the problems that alcoholism has aggravated, not caused. Do I choose the alcoholics because of who I am, yeah. It aggravates what's already in me. My sponsor says it like this. She said, Rick, adding an alcoholic to you is like sprinkling Miracle-Gro in your defects. Then, the book was written all those years ago. Where's that card? I had a card. So, there's that great, here it is. So, your book was written, published, and they wrote some messages to us. Listen to this. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. That's from an alcoholic saying that to the family members. They knew that. It's right in your book. Listen to this one. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It's as good for the wife as it is for the husband. It's as good for the family as it is for the alcoholic. But if I'm not sick, I don't need it. We have these little pamphlets in Al-Anon. These little things here. So I'll just read this one. This is the original one that my sponsor gave me. She was so kind as to highlight the ones I needed to pay attention to. You can see a little highlight right there. Even there's love her at the bottom. So it says, listen to this. Now we're talking now about alcoholism and family disease. We're not talking about people drinking. I'm now on the unmanageable part here. What is it that I'm doing? Who am I? Do you fail to recognize your accomplishments? Yeah. I had 2 university degrees. I was the head of a performing arts department. I'm a professional musician. Didn't recognize any of it. When I went to get my picture taken for the yearbook in my high school, I wouldn't get my picture taken. I failed to recognize all of it. Nobody was doing that to me. I was doing that to me. No alcoholic is to blame there. Listen to this one. Do you still feel responsible for others as you did for the problem drinker in your life? You're hurting, I feel sad. I didn't do it. My sponsor now said, does it have your name on it? No. Then why are you feeling that way? I don't know. Listen to this one. Do you cling to relationships because you're afraid of being alone? Isn't that the kind of relationship you want? To cling? You know what clings? That's plastic wrap that you put on a bowl. A booger. Ew. But of course I'm here because of you. That's what I'm doing. And when I started to take a look at that, this was like Technicolor, this stuff. Before it was like, what's that about? Now it's like, boom, right there in front of me. And then my sponsor says this. Oh, may you be blessed with a sponsor like this. She said, Rick, have you truly accepted the fact that alcoholism is a family disease, and as such, it's a disease you have? The answer at that time was no. The answer today is yes. And that's the journey. That's the journey. Because if I'm sick, if I have this spiritual, emotional, mental malady, you better not even let me know about that unless there's a way to get out of it. Because it's like taking that running leap off of a cliff once you've really done this. You find your feet firmly planted in midair. Man, there's better be something to help me get out of this. And there's this blessed thing. And isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing that for us, the family member, the road to the awakening is exactly the same as it is for the alcoholic. So for me, as the rest of this weekend unfolds, I'll be listening to these brilliant speakers. I've had a chance to hear many share on those steps because they're the steps that I practice. And I'm so looking forward to that. Because you see, I want the awakening. I've had an awakening. I want the awakening to continue. I'm not finished with step one. I've heard people say step one is the only one you can do perfectly. Well, if that's the case, I'm not finished. I certainly haven't done it perfectly, but I crossed the bridge. I crossed the bridge from the side that said, it's you, to the side that said, oh my God, it's me. And look at what it is that I do apart and separate from. And the quality of the relationships I was able to have with that alcoholic father, with a mother, with so many other people improved dramatically. I just so touched, like I opened with, and I'll kind of close closely with this, with my dad. The first time I ever told my father I loved him, he punched me square in the face. It's a difficult place to be. That protecting thing, when I was a kid, I was always too weak to go in and protect. But when I got older, I got stronger. And I went in to protect. And what they turned into absolutely barroom brawls, physical, call the police fights with my father in the midst of the drinking. That's where we were. And I got to this stuff and started to do what you told me to do it in really strong, structured, specific ways. And a relationship started to grow with that man. And, he took this fantastic canoe trip, and it was just an amazing experience. And he drank again, but then he got sober again. And 13 months before he died, he got diagnosed with a nasty cancer, lung cancer. And our amends were made. The resentments were gone. There was an adult man wanting to be present with his adult father. And I'm so blessed that I was able to be with him to the very, very end. I was at every chemotherapy treatment with him. I was at every doctor's appointment with him. And some of the chats that we were able to have. One time he had just taken a first chemotherapy treatment, and I had a speaking trip booked. And he had chemo, and there was nobody around. We didn't know how he was going to react. And I wasn't fixing him. I wasn't there caretaking. I was taking care in a true, genuine way of someone that I loved. And so I canceled the speaking trip and stayed with my dad. And when I left a few days later, he hugged me and he said, son, he said, I couldn't ask for a better son. I didn't want that. I wasn't looking for that. I didn't need that. But it was so beautiful to hear it. Because my sponsor had said to me, she said, you just be the best son you can be. And when we get right with God, we can be the best sons. We can be the best husbands. We can be the best wives. We can be the best people in our communities. when we get right with God. And when he died, I was with him to the very end. I watched them push the box in. I said, thanks, Dad. Because you see, my father was an alcoholic, but he was more than an alcoholic. He was a man. He was a man who had alcoholism. He was a man who loved his kids. He was a man who was terrifically intelligent. He was a man who loved to laugh, and he loved to do things with people, and he loved to socialize, and he had alcoholism. And you have given me the gift of being able to lift the veil and not deny any of that alcoholism, but acknowledge and accept the beauty of who he was, and I'm so grateful for that. There's a magnificent painting that stands on a side altar in London, England, in St. Paul's Cathedral. It's the picture of a traditional robed figure standing with its right hand raised, knocking on the door of a cottage. Got a lantern in one hand, and there's kind of vines all around. And you look, of course, we all seen the picture. No, there's no handle on the outside. And beneath, up in the top corners, it says, the light of the world. Beneath it says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, if any man hear my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and sup with him and he with me. And as I admit that I am powerless over alcohol, as I admit that my life is unmanageable, I start to open the door and the awakening begins. And I do the two, I do the inventory, I do the amends. I do them regularly through 10. I pray, I meditate, the awakening happens. And that's the way that works. That we open the door from the inside by doing these steps. That's what I did. My sponsor said to me in the very beginning, she said, Rick, we do not think our way into right action. We act our way into right thinking. And the actions we, the members of Al-Anon, take are quite simply called the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. God bless you all. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.